Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today because we need to have a little chat about something that we all love doing. And I do mean every last one of us has played the blame game. Now, I know that's not how you expected this to start, but hear me out. You see, when things go sideways in our world, when the decisions coming out of Washington, D.C. don't sit right, the first thing we do is look around and say, who is responsible for this mess? And more often than not, our eyes land squarely on the White House. Now imagine this scenario. President B has been in office for a while, making decisions that are every corner of this country, including those tricky and very frustrating situations like the recent migrant influx. And there by his side is the vice president, or should I say Madam Vice President. Now she's smart, she's capable, and she's every bit as committed to this country as he is. But here's the thing. She's not the one driving the bus. She's more like the co-pilot, providing support, advice, and occasionally offering a much-needed reality check. So when President B makes a decision, let's say one that involves tightening the borders to manage the influx of migrants, who do we blame if things don't go as planned? Makes a decision, let's say one that involves tightening the borders to manage the influx of migrants, who do we blame if things don't go as planned? First, do we blame who the president was running against, who blocked a very important process that could have made this situation easier, but it was blocked for no other reason other than pride and ego? Do we look at the president and hold him accountable for his suggestion being blocked? Or do we turn our gaze to Madam Vice President and say, you should have stopped it? Now, we're going to dig into that a little bit deeper because I want to break down what are the roles between President and Madam Vice President. And let's see if we can stop looking backward and look forward to make whatever situations we're all going through better as the new voting year comes upon us. We don't have much time.
Section 1, the vice president's role, the trusted co-pilot you. Let's get one thing clear right off the bat. The vice president, you know, the kind who's there with the snacks, the map, and a playlist that keeps you awake on those long drives. But they're not the one with their hands on the wheel. That's the president's job. So, when President Strong decides to make a big move, like blocking a migrant influx, Madam Vice President Fierce isn't the one flipping the switch. She's more like the voice in the passenger seat saying, are you sure you want to take this route? But ultimately, it's President Strong who makes the call. Now, this doesn't mean the vice president is just along for the ride. Far from it. Madam Vice President Fierce is there to provide counsel and cons. And yes, sometimes to try and steer the president away from a decision that might not be in everyone's best interest. But at the end of the day, the president is the one with the final say. He's the one who stands before the cameras and says, this is my decision, and I own it. Section 2, the heartbreaking decline of what happens when the president, the one who's been steering this massive ship called the United States, starts to falter. Now, I want you to picture this. President Strong, a man who once had the energy of 1,000 suns, begins to show signs of wear. It's slow at first to stumble in his speech, a moment of confusion during a press conference, but over time, it becomes clear. The burden of leadership, the weight of the world, it's starting to take its toll. Madam Vice President Fierce watches this unfold with a heavy heart. She's been his right hand, his confidant, the one who's been there in the trenches with him. And now she's faced with a heartbreaking reality. President Strong can't continue like this. The country needs leadership, and more importantly, it needs someone who can make those tough decisions with a clear mind and steady hand. So, as President Strong begins to step back, Madam Vice President Fierce steps up. She's no longer just the co-pilot, she's now the captain of the ship. And the nation watches as she takes the helm, not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows the gravity of the role she's stepping into. It's not just about making decisions, it's about leading a nation. Section 3. The funny side of blame the VP as the fall gal you. Now, let's take a moment to appreciate the absurdity of how quick we are to blame the vice president for things that go wrong, especially when she's taken over mid-crisis. It's almost like blaming the substitute teacher for not knowing where the class left off the day before. Sure, she's in charge now, but let's be real, she didn't write the lesson plan. Think about it. President Strong makes a tough call on border security, and when things don't pan out the way we hoped, who do we point fingers at? Madam Vice President Fierce. Why didn't you stop him? We ask, as if she had the power to snatch the pen out of his hand just in time. But here's the kicker, no matter how much power the vice president has, she's not a mind reader, and she's certainly not a puppet master. She's doing her best with the cards she's been dealt, just like the rest of us. And yet, we act like she's got some magic wand that she chose not to wave. Funny, isn't it? Section 4. Voter accountability. It's on us to you. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter, the part where we all need to take a good, long look in the mirror. How many times have we gotten mad at the person we voted into office? They promised change. We cry. Why didn't they fix this or that? But here's the thing, y'all, if we're only voting once every 4 years, we're not doing our job as citizens. We seem to forget that the real work of democracy happens in the midterms. That's when we decide who's going to be in Congress, who's going to be the governors, the mayors, the city council members, the people who actually make the laws and policies that affect our day-to-day lives. Yet so many of us treat midterms like an optional extra. Oh, I'll vote next time, we say. It's not as important as the presidential election. But let me tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. When we skip those midterm elections, we're basically handing over our power on a silver platter. We're saying, do whatever you want. I'll just be over here complaining when things don't go my way. But democracy doesn't work like that. It's not a spectator sport. We've got to be in the game every 2 years like clockwork. If we don't, then we can't be surprised when the change we hope for doesn't happen. Section 5. The beauty of our role, we are the decision makers. Here's the beautiful part. We're the ones who decide who gets to be in those rooms where it happens. We're the ones who choose the leaders who shape the future of this country. But that power isn't just exercised every 4 years. It's every 2 years, like a heartbeat, keeping the lifeblood of democracy flowing. So, if the person we voted for didn't deliver the change we wanted, maybe it's because we didn't show up when it counted. Maybe we didn't give them the support they needed by electing the right people to Congress, the ones who could help push through the policies we care about. And that's on us. We've got to take accountability, not just for the leaders we choose, but for how we participate in this process. Because democracy isn't just about casting a ballot and walking away. It's about staying engaged, staying informed, and showing up every time we have a chance to make our voices heard. So, the next time you're tempted to blame the vice president for something that wasn't entirely in her control, we're the ones who need to be active participants, voting every 2 years, keeping our elected officials accountable, and making sure our democracy works for all of us. At the end of the day, the real power doesn't lie in the Oval Office alone, it's in every voting booth across this country. And if we don't show up, we're handing that power to someone else. So let's make a pact right here, right now, to show up, to vote, to stay engaged, because that's how we make the change we want to see. Thank you. And remember, democracy doesn't just happen every 4 years. It's happening every single day. And we are the ones who make it happen.